There are hundreds of thousands of people presumed dead, suffocating to death, crushed to death under rubble because of United States bombs. And that's across this administration and Trump here, who did get this ceasefire that he touts all the time in October. But when you look at the actual numbers here, Israel has violated it hundreds of times since that period, multiple times a day, killed at least 400 Palestinians during that period. And this will go down as one of the worst crimes in the history of humanity that our government, the Biden administration and the Trump administration, are complicit in.
Does it go down? We have to debate this.
Yeah, we don't have time.
We actually don't.
Oh, we don't have time for the anti-Israel propaganda.
We don't have time
for the anti-Israel propaganda.
We don't have time to debate it, unfortunately.
Could you say Hamas was wrong at any point during this conversation?
I told you that's fine.
Listen, we know that there's plenty of disagreement on that issue.
I never said that.
In today's video, Emma Vigeland pushes back on Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip as a heated CNN debate erupts over Donald Trump's foreign policy and global leadership. As Scott Jennings defends Trump's outreach to Vladimir Putin, Emma Vigeland pushes back with sharp context on Russia's continued aggression, failed ceasefires, and the real risks of trusting authoritarian regimes. The clash exposes what's at stake for Ukraine, NATO, and America's credibility on the world stage. So let's dive in and watch how Emma Vigeland shuts down Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
The president's right. Trump claimed that Russia actually wants Ukraine to succeed. Now, you can tell from Zelensky's face exactly how he felt about that comment. Watch.
They're going to be helping. Russia's going to be helping. Russia wants to see Ukraine succeed. Once, it sounds a little strange, but I was explaining to the president, President Putin was very generous in his feeling toward Ukraine succeeding, including supplying energy, electricity, and other things at very low prices.
I guess the question I have coming out of this is, what's the strategy? Is there any strategy at all here? Or is Trump just getting on the phone with Putin, listening to what he says, and then regurgitating everything that Putin says to him?
It feels like this is held together with Scotch tape and Elmer's glue at this point, because the most important person that you need at that table, Putin, didn't even show up. He did call and sort of set the groundwork before that meeting took place, but Putin has showed us over and over again where he stands. There's never been a ceasefire. After the meeting at the Vatican, after Alaska, after this week, he has shown us repeatedly that bombing is mightier than the pen. You can't have peace talks without a key player involved in this. And it doesn't matter what you have on paper. It doesn't hold on the ground if you don't have security guarantees, if you don't talk about the harsh issues, the difficult topics of territory, which President Trump has said are still sticky and they haven't come to be resolved at this point.
So, Scott, why is Trump so seemingly naive about this? And also, why is he giving Putin so much credibility on the world stage that he wants what's best for Ukraine? Here's how Jim Garrity put it. This is like saying that Trump wanted to help Kamala Harris succeed in their last presidential election, or that the Death Star wanted Alderaan to succeed. For there to be peace, all Putin would have to do is issue the order, stop bombing, stop shooting, and peace would occur.
Yeah, I think the president is constantly talking to both of these guys and trying to find a way to get them to both get into a place where they don't have to go back home and say, we lost. I mean, that's the reality here. This only ends with a negotiated settlement. Both people have to go home and say, we won, or we got something out of this, or this didn't totally end on terms that are opposed to us. It's very tricky, and obviously it's, a solution has evaded him for the last year. I don't have really any faith in Vladimir Putin. They've never engaged in any kind of ceasefire. He's never shown any interest really in ceasing hostilities for any period of time, and they've bombed Ukraine at times, when it felt like something was happening, and then Russia moves in and
just this
rattles
weekend, 500,000
Ukraine.
people
So
without power in Ukraine, like 2 days before your meeting with.
But
that's not exactly a sign that you're interested in peace.
But I credit the president for trying. It may be the most difficult foreign policy issue he has to deal with. I think ultimately it will be dealt with, but it's not going to be dealt with. I mean, Putin's never going to go to Moscow and wave a white flag, and you don't want Zelensky to have to do that either, because obviously they're the aggrieved party here. So it's like trying to, put a camel through the eye of a needle.
It's definitely not being solved on day one.
What makes this debate so tense is that the facts on the ground keep undermining the optimistic framing Scott Jennings is trying to sell. Rina Ninan's skepticism lines up with what most foreign policy analysts have said for years. Vladimir Putin responds to leverage, not goodwill. Since 2022, Russia has repeatedly violated proposed pauses in fighting, including humanitarian corridors, while continuing missile and drone strikes on civilian infrastructure. That pattern alone makes claims of sudden benevolence toward Ukraine hard to take seriously. There's also the credibility issue. Independent investigations and international monitors have found no evidence backing several high-profile Russian accusations against Ukraine, while documenting extensive attacks on homes, hospitals, and power grids. Trusting a single phone call over years of documented behavior is not diplomacy, it's wishful thinking. Rina's point resonates because effective negotiations usually involve pressure points, sanctions enforcement, military deterrence, and unified allied messaging. None of those work if one side is treated as trustworthy despite breaking commitments. History matters here. The Minsk agreements collapsed not because Ukraine refused peace, but because Russia never stopped supporting military operations while talking de-escalation. That same playbook appears to be repeating. Meanwhile, every time bombs fall during talks, Ukraine's bargaining position weakens and civilians pay the price. What's missing from Scott Jennings' argument is the global signal this sends. If aggression is rewarded with credibility, it tells authoritarian leaders force works. Rina Ninan's perspective reflects geopolitics. Peace isn't created by flattering strongmen. It's created when violations carry consequences globally today.
Yeah, there's another big problem that's looming off the Eurasian continent, which is Taiwan. Right. And so as we are dealing with this, the Chinese leadership is sitting in the capital watching how we're behaving with one of our supposed allies, Ukraine. And if we reward territorial benefit Vladimir Putin's aggression, you will see a signal to the Chinese leadership that they can go into Taiwan and they are not going to necessarily be guaranteed that the United States is going to push them back. That is a major strategic problem for us. The way we are reorienting ourselves away from our commitments in the Pacific and in Europe and toward this sort of Monroe Doctrine, Western Hemisphere strongman stance you were talking about earlier is a problem for us on the global scene.
Well, our national security strategy,
I would say it's not a problem in the context of, as Zelensky said today, Russia will win without the United States' involvement on Ukraine's side. And so the power dynamics are completely different. And I think that's why you see the president trying to bring Putin to the table and provide him some out to say that he won this. I don't think President Trump cares about what anyone, including myself at this table, says about the strategy that he believes is the right one. This whole idea of moral ambiguity in dealing with Putin, I totally get that. But we can also acknowledge that what we've been doing and what we previously did clearly didn't.
But what's the evidence that this is working? I mean, Trump had a whole party for Putin in Alaska. He literally rolled out a red carpet for him, went out in a press conference, said nice things about him, and then nothing?
I don't know what's happening behind the scenes, but I am saying that we've done things the more traditional way and just going out there and calling Putin an evil war criminal, who of course he is, but does not want to sit at the table and actually negotiate.
Here's the thing, I don't see any evidence. You can say that the previous thing didn't work. The current thing is also not working.
Not yet.
And the only thing that it's doing is emboldening
so
Putin.
it's not.
I don't understand. What is the evidence that it's working?
It's not working until it does. I mean, that's the thing. You keep talking and you keep trying to get these guys.
Well, you could say that about the last effort.
It's not
because
working
I think
until
the other thing is that the very same people who for the last 4 years have basically been saying we need to just give up. We need the United States to wave the white flag and let Ukraine fall if it's going to fall. What they don't acknowledge is that the only reason that we're at a point where Putin even has to talk to some extent is because Ukraine has kept up the military pressure. The military pressure.
And how have they done that?
Has been
with our help.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
I mean,
your MAGA friends were opposed to that, Scott. They were opposed to the United States helping.
My friend is the president. He's not opposed to that.
Okay.
He's obviously kept.
He said he's pure MAGA, though.
He was. So was his vice president.
Are we not supporting Ukraine militarily?
All of those people
of course we are.
Were opposed to it.
And we got NATO to do more. And we got
that
Europe
is
to do
the only
more.
reason that he has a chance of even sitting down with Putin.
When you talk to people
What Jamal Simmons and Abby Phillip are getting at is grounded in how deterrence actually works, not vibes or optimism. Since the invasion began, Russia has only adjusted its behavior when confronted with real costs, battlefield losses, coordinated sanctions, and sustained military aid to Ukraine. That pressure is why Moscow even entertains talks at all. History shows appeasement doesn't shorten wars, it drags them out. Crimea in 2014 is the clearest example. Limited consequences convinced Putin escalation was manageable. Jason Rance's framing ignores the second-order effects. Allies in Europe and Asia don't just listen to what Washington says, they watch what it rewards. If territorial conquest leads to negotiations on favorable terms, Taiwan isn't an abstract concern anymore. It's a live lesson for Beijing. US intelligence assessments have repeatedly warned that perceived Western weakness accelerates Chinese timelines, not slows them. There's also a myth that diplomacy and pressure are opposites. The most successful negotiations, from the Dayton Accords to Iran's nuclear talks, only happened after leverage was established. Ukraine's ability to resist, backed by NATO support, is the leverage. Remove that and talks become surrender by another name. And the evidence matters. Russia has broken every major ceasefire it signed since 2014, often within days. Bombing civilian infrastructure during negotiations isn't a confidence-building measure, it's coercion. Pretending otherwise doesn't make peace more likely. Jamal Simmons and Abby Phillip's position reflects a hard truth. Peace comes from strength plus diplomacy, not diplomacy without consequences in today's fractured global security environment today.
Who are like in the thick of this. I asked someone who's an expert on this, what will really move the needle at this point? Like, we're trying something different here. President Trump's trying to get this to go through. It's not working. And they said sanctions on Russia could really, really affect the economy. I just don't see President Trump going anywhere near that or that happening. But I just don't know of any other pressure point. I was here the weekend before the hostage release, and I said, President Trump is going to make this happen. I know he's going to make this happen. There was fear from Netanyahu and fear on Hamas's side. The balance of power is different here. Putin does not think that Trump will push him back on this. And I think that is the big selling point on this.
Yes, and I do think that the kind of elephant in the room here is the United States completely losing, and the Biden administration is immensely complicit in this as well. Moral standing throughout the world due to our complicity in the genocide in Gaza, which has made it very difficult for us to speak to Ukrainian sovereignty and having a bully like the Russian government invading their sovereign territory. We had a doctor on our show who spoke about how the death toll is in the hundreds of thousands at this point, because the numbers that are currently being reported are only the numbers of the death toll of people who have been counted in the hospital. There are hundreds of thousands of people presumed dead, suffocating to death, crushed to death under rubble because of United States bombs. And that's across this administration. And Trump here, who did get this ceasefire that he touts all the time in October. But when you look at the actual numbers here, Israel has violated it hundreds of times since that period, multiple times a day, killed at least 400 Palestinians during that period. And this will go down as one of the worst crimes in the history of humanity that our government, the Biden administration, and the Trump administration are complicit in.
Does it go
no
down?
leg
Does it
to
go
stand
down?
on.
We have to debate this.
Yeah.
We don't have time.
We actually don't.
Oh, we don't have time for the
Amnesty
anti-Israel
International,
propaganda.
We don't have
We
time
have
to
time for
debate
the
it.
anti-Israel
We don't have
propaganda.
time to debate it, unfortunately.
Could you say Hamas was wrong at any point during this conversation?
I told you that it's fine.
Listen, we know that there's
No one
plenty.
said that.
We know there's plenty of
Except for you.
disagreement on
No,
that issue.
I never said that.
We let it on spool for 2 minutes, but sure. Well, I don't understand. Israel's our ally. Not a single word in your speech for the atrocities
Shouldn't be.
that were committed on October the 7th.
We should
not
cut
a
off
single
arms
word,
tomorrow.
Not a single word for the idea that Israel has every right to defend itself. Not a single word for the fact that Hamas right now is killing people inside of God, their own people. You
What
seem
you
to lay
say
it all at the feet of Israel,
Israeli
a democratic
human rights
ally
group.
in your own
Excuse me.
country, and you have no negative word for the terrorists who raped and murdered and kidnapped.
Excuse me.
Zero.
B'Tselem,
None.
Israeli human rights group, says
None.
they're
And
committing
you still
genocide.
don't.
Guys,
you still don't.
We gotta go. Rita Ninan, thank you very much for being here.
Rina Nainian and Emma Vigeland are pushing back against is the idea that pressure somehow equals hostility when history shows the opposite. Sanctions and military support are often the only tools that shift authoritarian behavior. Russia's economy shrank sharply after coordinated sanctions in 2022, with capital flight, labor shortages, and long-term energy losses forcing Moscow to rely heavily on China. That pressure, not friendly rhetoric, is why the Kremlin even pretends to negotiate. Scott Jennings also glosses over credibility. Putin responds to leverage, not optimism. Every temporary pause in fighting has coincided with moments when Ukraine strengthened its defenses or Western aid surged. When that support wavers, strikes escalate. That pattern is documented by independent conflict monitors, not partisan spin. The Gaza discussion exposes another uncomfortable reality. US moral authority matters in global diplomacy. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and even Israeli human rights groups have warned that civilian harm undermines America's ability to argue for international law elsewhere. That doesn't excuse Hamas terrorism, but acknowledging one crime doesn't erase another. Democracies are judged by higher standards precisely because they claim them. Rina Nanyan and Emma Vigeland's position reflects a consistent principle. Power without accountability destabilizes everything. Whether it's Russia testing borders or allies ignoring civilian casualties, the lesson is the same. Without real consequences, violence becomes policy. Strategic pressure paired with clear red lines isn't radical, it's how deterrence has worked for decades. Ignoring that reality doesn't produce peace, it just delays the cost for all sides. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.